PI MSN program, and I'm currently going to do a hangout on the Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, and a lot of the senators in the government want to have this current policy that we have in place repealed. So what I'm going to do is, there's a lot of information out there, and my focal point is where I've been reading involves the senators for the state of North Carolina, and I've kind of focused on Senator Richard Burr. And Senator Burr has been an advocate for repeal for the president's health care law, and he was given a opportunity. And I want to read this letter that he sent to the Raleigh News and Observer, and it says, an open letter to the Raleigh News and Observer for Senator Richard Burr. And it said, this week, the Raleigh News and Observer ran an editorial attacking the Patient Care Act. My proposal to repeal Obamacare and replace it with patient-centered reforms of our healthcare system that are actually affordable. Throughout the editorial, they mischaracterized the proposal and misled the readers about the plan and its contents. In an attempt to set the record straight, I prepared a response. The News and Observer said they would be happy to run if the length was cut in half. As this is a complicated, multifaceted plan that requires a full explanation, I felt it better to offer my full response here instead. Thank you for reading. Sincerely, Richard Burr. And I'm just going to hit a little bit here. What everybody's concerned about is the outstanding cost, and I think that's where we had the issue with Congress. Whenever this was initiated and this program was being looked at to be put in place, I think Americans did not expect the cost to be as astronomical as it was. And I'll give you some numbers as we further go through. And I also think that they did not expect the changes to occur, and workplaces were affected, employment was affected. And when looking at this from a nurse's perspective, I try to look at it with an open eye. But in reading, nurses are sometimes just, if you're not in upper management or in administration, you don't really understand what the cost can incur as far as patient care goes. And in reading, we see bedside. We don't see policy making and how healthcare affects and impacts how government affects and impacts healthcare. And I felt like reading this letter would shine a little light here on Senator Burr and how he felt about this. And after reading the letter, it really made me see things through different eyes. And it also gave me a little more insight about the American people as a whole. And Senator Burr states, when the health care debate began, I warned the president's health care bill was the wrong direction for our nation and for North Carolina. I offered an alternative then, the Patient's Choice Act, along with Senator Tom Coburn, because healthcare was broken before Obamacare. Unfortunately, as a result of its implementation, things are worse today than they were before. Going back to the way our healthcare system looked before is not an option, but neither is continuing on the current course of increased costs, government mandates, and broken promises. The president and Congress, President and congressional Democrats made many promises during the healthcare debate. Since the law's enactment, North Carolinians have felt the adverse effect of the broken promise after another. There is no denying that dire predictions from the debate have come true. Just as the millions of Americans who lost the plans they liked after being promised they could keep them, our families nationwide who were promised that their annual premiums would go down by $2,500, but seeing premiums go up at an average of 41% in the individual market. He said, it seems like every day another employer reduces hours or stops offering insurance in response to Obamacare's mandates. These mandates are hurting our economy and families. The president's $2.6 trillion budget busting law used Medicare to fund new entitlements we can't afford and expanded the Medicare program, a program that nationally some 40% of physicians do not even see Medicaid patients, instead of reforming it to better meet patients' needs now and in the future. As Governor Perdue, which is the governor of North Carolina, warned, Obamacare's taxes on life-saving medical products threatened our nation and the North Carolina's standing as a global leader of medical innovation. It is clear that the current course is unsustainable. Fortunately for families across North Carolina and our nation, we can lower costs and empower patients in the healthcare choices and decisions. In stark contrast to Obamacare, the Patient Care Act, a proposal I unveiled last week with my colleague, Senator Tom Coburn, a physician, Senator Orrin Hatch, is based on principles that will lower costs and expand access to quality care and coverage by empowering Americans to make their own healthcare decisions rather than empowering the government to make the decisions for them. He states, first, the Patient Care Act repeals Obamacare, throwing out the burdensome, costly mandates and government regulations and adopting common sense consumer protections, including prohibiting lifetime benefit caps, allowing dependents to stay on their parents' plans until age 26. And it says, under my plan, no individual could be denied coverage based on any pre-existing condition. He also says my plan addresses a distortion in the tax code that drives up healthcare costs. We cap the exclusion of an employee's employer-provided health care at 65% of the total cost of the most generous employer plans on the market, like union plans. Everyone with employer-sponsored health insurance under that amount wouldn't see any change in the tax treatment of their benefit. Unlike Obama's, he calls it Obamacare's Cadillac tax, it imposes an across the board 40% excise tax on the richest benefit plans, regardless of an individual's income. Under my plan, the employee's health benefit above the threshold would be treated as a regular income for that employee. And as Ryan Ellis with Americans for Tax Reform pointed out this week, my plan will produce a net tax cut. Every American and every health plan is taxed under Obamacare. Targeted tax credits adjust for age and income will give individuals purchasing power and the opportunity to choose a plan that meets their specific needs. Because we lower costs through medical malpractice reform and increased transparency, these dollars will go further. He also states my plan modernizes Medicaid through a capped allotment, an idea brought forward by the Clinton administration to provide states with predictable funding while empowering them the programmatic flexibility to better meet their patient needs. Under my plan, a Medicaid beneficiary could choose to opt out of Medicaid and use their tax credit to purchase a plan that better meets their needs. Obamacare failed to reform Medicaid and put this already strained program at greater risk. Defenders of Obamacare claim that there are no alternatives, but alternatives existed at the time of the debate, and they exist today. Yes, my plan repeals Obamacare, but it also replaces it with reforms that address what was broken before Obamacare, as well as what has been made worse because of it. Opponents who incorrectly characterize my plan as the same old insurance system we had before Obamacare do so as a scare tactic because to acknowledge that there is an alternative with that lowers costs, increases choices, and covers Americans with pre-existing conditions is to admit that there is a better way than Obamacare. And lastly, he states, North Carolinians will find the Patient Care Act as an alternative they can believe in because we believe citizens, not government, know what's best for themselves and their families. Now, this was a letter that was given to the News and Observer as a statement because of what was being said about statements that he made about it. What I found interesting here was the president's $2.6 trillion budget busting law used Medicare to fund new entitlements. And looking at this and then seeing how the Medicaid program, how some 40% of physicians didn't even see Medicaid patients, instead of reforming it to be better, to meet the patient needs. When you're looking at this, it's kind of like the poor people are being affected by this, because if it's taken away from Medicaid and Medicare, we know people that are below the poverty level are usually the people who are insured under this government plan. And I also took a look at, and I'm just going to hold this up to show you. Here is the executive summary, which was several pages. And I went through it and looked at it and tried to pull out the different things that were important. And I also, tried to decide what to include in this and what would be the best approach with this. But what I felt was the best thing to do, let us see it from a senator's perspective, see what the senator thinks. And then we all know what we try to do in healthcare is be cost effective. And I think if we're going to take away from an already in place program that is suffering to fund another program that the country and North Carolinians thought was going to be something that would be, what's a better word to say, that would be helpful and not hurt us, was very disturbing. And what it's saying here is the plan is going to provide relief to Americans that were hurt by the president's healthcare law, advance quality care for the patients, empower the patients, their families, small businesses and states with more choices, better serve some of the most vulnerable by modernizing Medicaid, lower the cost of health through increasing competition and choice, strengthen the transparency, delivery, and sustainability in healthcare. And I think what we all want with this plan is we want to make sure that no one suffers. And I think when we're saying what about the American consumer as a whole, a lot of people saw small businesses affected. People were made to acquire this insurance. If they didn't acquire the insurance, they were going to receive penalties behind it. But what I did find here in the did it end? Oh. Okay, I'm sorry. But let's get back to what I was talking about before I did something that I don't even know what I did, but it stopped playing. But when we look at the Obamacare, as we have termed it, we want to make sure that okay. But let's look at the overall what we're trying to get here. We're trying to make sure that the government as a whole makes it fair and things are mandated for the American people. Let's make sure that but when we look here, okay, to kind of wind this up, I've got a lot of background, but I'm not sure what it's coming from. What we're wanting to do is to make sure that the American people as a whole have a healthcare plan that's going to be for them and not against them. And we want to make sure that no one suffers behind the taxes and the payments that are mandated behind this program. And we want to make sure that Americans are happy with the program and that no one will be left out in the cold. Um, Thank you.